I do mantra meditation a lot, but I work the downward current, pulling what is up in the heavens down. And sometimes I get instructions. Sometimes I'm lost in my own thoughts because I haven't meditated in a couple days and I have to let my thoughts go until they settle out and get quiet. But I think that's part of why I have all this stuff come to me, because I'm not trying to get out of myself and go up there. You can't do anything up there. It's about bringing that down here.
Namaste. You're listening to the Sivana podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SivanaSpirit.com, the best place to shop for unique clothing, spiritual handcrafted jewelry, healing gemstones, and fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now, here's your host, Brett Larkin.
Sivana listeners, welcome back. I hope you've had a beautiful day so far, full of yoga, meditation, some peaceful moments, and we have an amazing guest and show in store for you today. Before I introduce her, I'd love for you to join our private Facebook community over at savanaeast.com/group. So head on over there so I can approve you as a member so we can talk about the show and all things life, yoga, and meditation. Now, today we're speaking to one of my favorite authors. I'm so excited to have her on the show. Anodea Judith, Ph.D. She's the author of several bestsellers and the definitive works on the chakras. So you probably know her from her books, The Wheels of Life and Eastern Body, Western Mind, which is one of my personal favorites. She has a doctoral degree in human health, a master's in clinical psychology, and is an experienced yoga teacher, having taught over 500 hours registered with Yoga Alliance. She is foremost Western writer on the subject of the chakra system, on bridging the philosophies of East and West, and especially relating to the field of psychology. So today we're going to learn how the chakras can really be used with a top-down approach to manifest your highest aspirations and create what she calls your own heaven on earth. So Anodea, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Brett. Exciting to be here.
So tell us, I'm just going to dive right in. Tell us what you mean by this idea that we can use the chakra system to create our little paradise, our own paradise here on earth, and this idea of going top down as opposed to bottom up. Because I know, having read a lot of your books, you usually go through the chakras with us, starting at chakra 1 and then moving up. So tell us about this new approach.
Well, after so many years of teaching the chakras from the bottom up, which is a logical way, it's the way it's mostly understood, that they are a ladder for liberation, a way to get to higher consciousness. And indeed, that's really true. But I also discovered that in the Tantric philosophy from which the chakras came, Tantra is a weaving of duality. And so there is an upward current and a downward current. What goes up must come down. And at the same time, I was manifesting a lot of things, and people said, how do you manifest so much? And I wasn't quite sure how I did it. I had to look inside and see. And I realized that the downward current of the chakras, which starts in highest consciousness, connected to source, connected to your higher self, connected to God, divinity, goddess, whatever you like to say is the higher absolute. And bringing that down is how we bring things from the thought planes to denser and denser levels until we manifest it on the physical plane.
So I would love for you to tell our listeners, because I think most of them are familiar with the chakras, but some of them might not be familiar with this concept of the current of manifestation and the current of liberation. I think that's sometimes confusing for people. And my understanding has always been it's these currents that actually make the chakras spin and why the chakras are moving. Can you go into detail for people on that? Because I want to make sure they understand that before we go deeper.
Well, I like to think of the core of the human, which in Sanskrit is called the Sushumna, as a rainbow bridge. You know, so many people associate the chakras with the rainbow colors. And the rainbow bridge mythically connects heaven and earth. In fact, it's said that as the rainbow bridge breaks down, heaven and earth will be separated and doomsday will approach. So I think that we avert doomsday by reigniting the rainbow bridge within the Sushumna, or the core of each one of us. Now, a bridge has traffic in two directions. northbound and southbound. And so the two directions, up and down, they're the most basic directions we have. What is above, what is below. And as upright creatures with a, upright spine, our consciousness really moves up and down the spine. There is a vertical hierarchy, if you will. And so as we associate the chakras with their elements, earth, water, fire, air, sound, light, and consciousness, we see that they go from the heaviest, which is earth at the base chakra, to the lightest and freest, which is consciousness, has no physical dimension. There's no limitation to it. And so as we move up, we liberate. We get to freer and freer forms. Water is freer than earth, which holds its shape. Air is invisible. Sound travels farther than air. Light travels farther than sound. So we liberate as we move up, and we get out of our fixed patterns and our addictions and our habits and our unconscious places. And by moving to consciousness, we have the ability to liberate ourselves from those patterns. So it's a very important upward journey. But what do you do then? There's so many people that have been 30, 40 years on the spiritual path pursuing higher consciousness. Meanwhile, the world is getting more and more messed up. And I think it's time that we came down out of our perch and said, what can I do about this? And, you said at the beginning how we can create our personal paradise. My real agenda in this is not just a personal paradise, but a global paradise. How do we create heaven on earth? How do we co-create that together to make a world that works, a world we can thrive in?
Beautiful. So I know so many of us, when we come to our mat, we have this experience of feeling connected maybe by the end of class to something greater than ourselves. And so that experience is that current of liberation where we sort of remember. And I'm so excited that you brought up and maybe are gamed a little bit to talk about Tantric philosophy, because that's something I love as well. And this idea that we travel up Sushumna or Brahmanadi to connect with, how would you describe it, this space beyond the seventh chakra? It's like the space from which we came. I sometimes describe it as like the space before the Big Bang, the space of no thing, of universal intelligence. What are your words for it?
Consciousness is a field in which we are embedded, from which everything is made, in the same way that the internet is now a field of consciousness. And then you download something on your little computer and you point your browser toward a website and you download that. Well, our attention is a facet of consciousness that's like a browser that goes out in this field, and it can download whatever our attention is focused on. My attention is focused on you right now, and so I'm downloading your image and your words. That's what I'm seeing, and I'm not thinking about other things. So I think it's a grand field. You can call it the absolute. I think of it as divine. It is the creative intelligence that is the mystery of this universe.
So we access that through our yoga and meditation practice. And then why I love the Tantric philosophy, it says you're bringing that intelligence back down with you, right? Into your daily life. And so that's now that current of manifestation. And that's why I would want to look at the chakras from a top-down approach.
Right. And, very few people write about it like that. Very few people have looked at it. But once I explain it to them, they go, oh, that makes so much sense. So in the downward approach, you start with your highest consciousness. You go into meditation. You finish your yoga. You do your meditation. You ask, you get guidance. You get an idea. And an idea is the I, which is the Sushumna, the capital letter I that goes up and down, and the feminine form of God, Dea, which is from which I got my name, Anodea. And so an idea is how a thought form comes into the consciousness of the I. Oh, I have an idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to create that. I'm going to write a new book. I'm going to create a workshop. I'm going to go on a vacation to an African safari. These are ideas. And we get lots of all the time. But of course, we don't follow all of them. We can get ideas about anything. Then we take it to the next level, which is to visualize that idea. Up here, it's just a concept, but everything begins with a conception. You have to have a concept before you can work on it. Once you have the concept, you can imagine it. And imagine is also the I, with the word mage, image. Mage is to make magic. And so when we imagine something, that's our first step down of consciousness coming into manifestation. What's your vision? Can you imagine creating what you want to create? Can you imagine a world that works? Can you imagine whatever it is, big or small, that you want to create? And that's where you get your vision. Your vision is, oh, here is the way I fulfill my life purpose.
And I think you're tapping into something that people have, and I know I do too, so many questions about, because we have so many ideas. There's so many things we can pursue. And listeners, I know you can't see Anodea like I can, but when she's talking about the vision, she's pointing towards her sixth chakra, right? That third eye center. And so how do we use what you're talking about here, the chakra system, to really hone our intuition so we know which are the right ideas to pursue and when?
Well, this is what happens as you come down the chakras. Each one below is a little more limited than the one above. It's the opposite of liberation. So up in my crown chakra, I can think of anything. I can picture flying in a spaceship to a galaxy 600,000 miles away, but it's not going to happen. When I go to visualize it, I get a little tiny bit more specific. So what can I imagine? Well, if I'm looking at all my ideas, I go, well, I can't really imagine going to a distant galaxy, not in our current technology. So there's a sorting out process. But I think of ideas like arrows that we put in a quiver on our back. Oh, that's a nice idea. I'll do that someday. That's a nice idea. I'd love to do that. And then every once in a while, we pull one of those arrows out of our quiver, we notch it up in a bow, and we point it to a target. The target is something we see in our sixth chakra, in our mind's eye. And that's the only place the target exists when we go towards creating something. It doesn't exist in the real world yet. It exists at some future point that only I can see. Like I might say, all right, I'm going to have a book done by December 12th. And I visualize the book all finished and sitting on my desk or turning in the manuscript or something. Only I can see that. So it is a matter of choice. We don't necessarily know which ideas to follow and which not to. Some of them we notch up and we can't see the target, or we miss the target and then we go back to another idea. But if we are in touch with our life purpose, how do we serve? What is your innate tendency, your talent, your gift? How do you serve? I think of our gift is what the divine gave to us. Giving our gift is how we give back to the divine.
And what advice do you have for listeners who maybe don't know what that gift is, or they want to use the chakras to tune in, or maybe get some hints about what their purpose might be?
Well, we have a workshop that we do on this called Creating on Purpose. And in the workshop, we take people through a divination process to get more clear on their life purpose. Because you're right, a lot of people don't know. Usually in a workshop, about a third know their life purpose, about a third kind of sort of know, but it's very hazy, and a third have no idea. And so I see life purpose as actually very general. Like it could be to make people laugh, to bring healing, to create beauty, to communicate, to connect people, to bring people into play. These are kind of the general life purpose. And it's something that you would do no matter where you went. You could have a job that's off your career, but you still would be connecting people. You still would be asking questions. You still would be studying and researching, whatever that is. Then the vision is the vehicle through which we serve our life purpose. So if my life purpose was to make people laugh, my vision could be to have a comedy show. It could be to be a clown for children's parties. It could be to write a comedy play for someone. There's a lot of ways I could fulfill that. My vision, if my life purpose was to work with children, I could, volunteer as a big sister. I could start an orphanage in India. I could teach elementary school. I could open a daycare center, or I could have lots of kids. The vision is how we fulfill that. And that's what we need to get here, the vision of where we're going.
Now, I love that. I want to go back a little bit because I love this analogy. I was picturing, this amazing huntress with the arrows on her back, right? And she's aiming. And as she aims, I'm wondering, because I'm sure you get this all the time, right? Everyone's biggest question about the chakras are like, how do I know my chakras are in balance, right? How do I know one, right? Everyone wants to balance their chakras. So is in that analogy, is it sort of like you have better aim to manifest this vision if all the chakras are aligned and in balance?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think of it this way, that the pictures you hold in your mind's eye are like a stained glass window that the light of consciousness shines through on its way to manifestation. And so imagine a strong light and a stained glass window and a wall, many feet away. If there's nothing between the window and the wall, you'll get exactly the picture of the window. So in other words, if there's nothing in the way, we get exactly what we visualize. Now, we have a lot of gunk in our chakras on the way down. So if you have furniture in the way and people standing there, the image that lands on the wall is going to be distorted. So part of this process of manifestation is to clear out the chakras so the divine can come through without distortion and really manifest through your chakras.
So I'm sure everyone listening at home is like, I want to do that. How do I do that? How do I clear out each chakra? And I love this analogy of the stained glass window. So what tips do you have for them at home?
Well, for the upper chakras, there is nothing better than meditation for clearing. Getting still in a deeper fashion, and we do this in the workshop, and it's also in the Creating on Purpose book. In the seventh chakra, we work with beliefs. What are your limiting beliefs? And does that belief serve you? And is there a better belief that would serve you more? And so how to illuminate beliefs that are in your way, how to bust them and change them. In the sixth chakra, we look at where are the illusions? Where do you not see your way? What is blocking your light? And usually that is the ability to sit still and focus and concentrate, because the upper chakras, there's nothing like meditation.
This podcast was brought to you by SivanaSpirit.com. In ancient Indian mythology, and even today, chakras are considered to be the most important energy centers in the body. It's been said that when all 7 energy points are aligned, deep spiritual development occurs. When the chakras come into balance, they bring harmony, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. In fact, sometimes when we feel off, it's really just these energy points that need to be worked on. Celebrate the 7 chakras with a beautiful must-have chakra tank. Printed down the spine with sophisticated metallic ink, the chakras are represented by unique hand-drawn symbols. You can add a pop to your style with elegance, all while reminding yourself of the deeper spiritual truth of our world. Use the exclusive discount code PODCAST30 for 30% off your first order today. Do you want a $25 gift card from SivanaSpirit.com completely for free? It's super easy. All you have to do is fill out a quick survey with 7 short questions, and then you'll be emailed your gift card to use whenever you're ready. This survey will help us better understand the most important thing in the world. You! Go to SivanaSpirit.com/podcast survey today and claim your reward. Again, that's SivanaSpirit.com/podcast survey. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because I think, again, whether it's the way some of your past books have been written and so many people talk about the chakras, I feel like people often have this sense that if their root chakra, their sense of personal safety and security, isn't balanced, that they maybe can't meditate, or they shouldn't attempt to meditate, or they shouldn't even try to, maybe do some stuff with the 7th chakra. Is there truth, or what are your thoughts in this needing to sort of be a linear progression as opposed to something that people can just sort of play with?
There's a certain logic to the linear progression in the body and sense of how the universe is arranged and how our body and nervous system is arranged. But I don't think that means we can only go in a linear progression. If people had to be perfectly balanced in their root chakra in order to accomplish anything, or in order to do yoga or meditate, nobody would do yoga or meditate, because very few people are really living a balanced life in the first chakra. So, it's just like some people think, well, do I have to have everything in order to enter a relationship? Well, no, because otherwise nobody would have a relationship. None of us are perfect. So I think that all the chakras, it's like spinning plates. One gets a little slow and then you got to go deal with that one. And then, whoop, this one's going, but now I got to go deal this one. And you're really working all of them simultaneously.
And what's your personal philosophy, or what advice do you give to students in your workshops when they say, hey, I really want to pick one or two chakras to sort of work on or balance those energy centers? How do people know which one need their attention the most?
Well, I would never advise somebody to pick just one or two, because the beauty is the system as a whole, and it's a formula for wholeness. It's like a recipe. If we address our lives on each one of these levels, we have a good shot at becoming whole. That's what the Tantric philosophy was about. It was about weaving the fabric of reality out of the dualities of Shiva and Shakti, Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and matter, inside and outside, up and down, dark and light. All of those polarities weave the fabric of reality. And so if we're not playing with both ends, we're not playing with a full deck. But I don't think we have to have everything perfect in order to do anything. We are always works in progress.
Right, because working with all of them at the same time could also just feel really overwhelming.
Well, not if you're working with your core, because the Sushumna connects all of them. So if you continually work with your core, then you have something to come back to. And that is really the quickest way to come into balance. We're out of our center, we're out of our core when we're out of balance.
And when you say to come back into our core, you're talking about meditation?
No, I'm talking about, how do I reference myself? Where do I live? Am I jumping out of myself and living in my attention on somebody else? Or am I really in touch with what is in here all the way from top to bottom and bottom to top? Do I come from this place inside?
So what's a technique that you do or you suggest people do to sort of do that check-in? Because it sounds like something would need to do a couple times a day, if not more often.
Well, the simplest technique is anytime you sit down, especially to meditate, but sit down at your computer or sit down to a meal or get in your car to drive or sit down for a conversation, send your roots down, your tailbone back just a little to create a wider base. And at the same time you send your roots down, lift your crown up. And when you pull the top and bottom of the Sushumna apart, what happens is the chakras start to come into alignment. And then I advise people to imagine breathing up the Sushumna on the inhale and down on the exhale, as if there were a ping pong ball going up and down an elevator shaft, and we're clearing out the core with our breath.
Beautiful. It's like a Hamsa meditation, which I love to teach. And it's so simple. And I love that it's coming back here, because I think sometimes people learn that technique and then do more complicated meditations. And it's really such a good one just to bring you back to your center.
Now, when I teach my chakra yoga teacher training, I have people put a string down the middle of their mat and tape the string top and bottom. Or if it's their own mat, they want to put a magic marker, that's fine. But often I'm teaching at a yoga center where they don't want me to draw on the mats. And then all the time we're practicing, we are aware of where our core is in relation to that center of the mat. So it's a way to align the center of your spine, your crown pulling away from your base. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a pigeon pose or a downward dog or a cobra, you're still always have that awareness of the line on your mat to remind you of your own core.
Beautiful. I want to come back to talking a little bit about the tantric principles that we touched on at the beginning and coming back to this current of liberation and current of manifestation. So when we meditate, it's not like we have to be, do you suggest that maybe someone come into a meditation perhaps with a question? Say we're really going to focus on getting beyond and going into this realm beyond the seventh chakra. Is it best us to sort of marinate in that space and see what comes? Or do you think people can go into that experience with a very specific, maybe a very particular question and receive some guidance to bring back in?
Oh, I think a question is wonderful. I often tell people, sit with a question for 6 months. Just like something that you're really inquiring about. I think one thing about questions is we want answers too quickly. And questions are an invitation to have a deeper inquiry into something. So people say, oh, why do my shoulders get sore? What is that about my fifth chakra? Well, if I tell them the answer, they'll just wrap it up and put it away. But I say it's an invitation to inquire deeper. It's an invitation to pay more attention to what's going on there. So, sit with a question and bring it into your meditation. Set an intention is another way. My intention in eating this meal is to eat slowly and taste my food. My intention in this conversation is to heal a rift that happened. My intention in doing this, my intention on my mat. I have people step off their mat before they start yoga. So think of your intention, and when you're ready, step onto your mat as if you're stepping into a temple and plant your intention into your feet. And that's a way of beginning to manifest it.
Beautiful. I love that. I know we're definitely in a culture where everyone wants the answer immediately. Used to Googling, and it doesn't always work that way in meditation. So it's a good reminder. So we're bringing this consciousness, this wisdom back into our daily life. And I love the analogy you gave us of the visual of the stained glass window. A lot of times in my practice, I think of it as this, it's like a dripping down, whether it's a golden light or like a little drip down that then drips into each of the chakras and helps balance each chakra. Now, is that just crazy, or what do you have to do?
I mean, in the Sanskrit, they talk about it amrita, the nectar. And that is the nectar of pure consciousness that drips down from Bindu, the limitless point. I think of that point in the exact center of the 1,000-petaled lotus as a dimensionless point that we want to stay centered in our meditation. But just like a flower opens up to the sunlight and it drinks the sunlight in and down to its roots, we open our chakras, and actually in some of the old texts they were talked about like condensing chambers of consciousness, condensing it into denser and denser levels as we go down. So my meditation has always been to sit there, open my crown chakra, and in a sense drink in the pure consciousness, drink in the guidance, drink in, just that sense, that nourishment that I get from meditating. And I've been a meditator for 45 years. I do mantra meditation a lot, but I work the downward current, pulling what is up in the heavens down. And sometimes I get instructions. Sometimes I'm lost in my own thoughts because I haven't meditated in a couple days and I have to let my thoughts go until they settle out and get quiet. But I think that's part of why I have all this stuff come to me, because I'm not trying to get out of myself and go up there. You can't do anything up there. It's about bringing that down here.
Now, this is getting really juicy because, and I'm so glad, it's so fun to talk to you about this downward current. What are your thoughts then on some yoga or meditation techniques? Like, let's talk about, for example, Kundalini yoga, right? Or all these exercises that people might do to activate Kundalini Shakti at the base of the spine and draw it up. How does that fit into everything we're talking about in terms of the downward current and just the chakras in general?
Well, Kundalini is largely focused on the upward current, but it also really strengthens the body. Anytime we do a lot of pranayama, we are increasing the charge of the body or increasing the prana. So as we increase the energy, we feel more alive, we feel more sensitized, we feel more awake, and that can only help, right? But again, I don't think Kundalini is about grounding it. And I personally don't think it's a very grounded practice for teaching people how to manifest in the world.
Right, it's more about moving up, but I guess there's value in that too, and maybe it's different times in your life, or
well, I think we do both all the time. I go back and forth. I live in near San Francisco. I go back and forth near the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. Sometimes I drive home northbound, and sometimes I drive into the city southbound. It's like it depends on what we're doing. If I want to go on retreat and maybe fast a little or something, then I'm actually working to lighten myself up. If I'm trying to focus and concentrate, I'm going to work with a downward current.
There's nothing more essential to a gemstone collection than rose quartz, and SivanaSpirit.com has a beautiful selection you'll absolutely love. Use the code PODCAST30 at checkout for 30% off, and we promise you and your heart will be thankful. I love asking people who come on the show about their personal practice, and this, in particular, their personal morning routines and their personal meditation practice. And I'd love to hear about yours, what your sort of morning or grounding or energizing practice looks like. And I know you mentioned mantra meditation, which I'd love for you to define for the listeners, and then maybe tell us a little bit about why mantra meditation in particular is something you're working with right now or works really well with these principles.
Yeah, well, I was initiated into TM, Transcendental Meditation, back in 1972. So that was 45 years ago. And TM is a process where they give you a mantra. And so I've used that mantra for 45 years. It's very, very deep in my soul. It can run in the background when I'm driving. You know, it's there all the time. So it has a deep power because I've used it for so long. I often do visualization. I watch my breath. I do lots of different kinds. But the mantra meditation has kind of been my staple, my fundamental practice. And like I say, I've been meditating for 45 years. I would say I don't always do it daily, but when I'm home or not on the road, I do daily. In fact, I'll not even be able to quite get my day started. Go, what's wrong? I don't feel focused. Oh, I haven't meditated. Lately I've been having an issue in my hips because I struggle with Lyme disease, but my yoga practice was to do a series of 7 sun salutations. Might not sound like very much, but I take it through the chakras with quite a bit of variations in each one that focuses in turn on each chakra. And that used to be my morning, about an hour practice. I could do it, in 40 minutes if I didn't have much time, or I could do it in an hour and a half if I wanted to hold the poses longer. And I managed to create it so that it goes through all the basic poses that you would do in kind of a, moderate level yoga class.
And is this something that if you have your preference, you're choosing to do in the morning or the evening, or are you pretty disciplined about doing stuff at the same time each day? Because I think what's inspiring for listeners too is a lot of times we talk to, I know I talked to Shiva Ray a couple weeks ago, and she said she practices a lot in the evening. And I think so many people feel this pressure that they have to do it in the morning, or that there has to be this certain discipline. So I always love it when people are willing to share like what it really looks like for them.
Well, I have very little regularity in my life as it is because I travel a lot to teach. And so I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to catch a flight. I'm, time zone changes. I, go to the East Coast and I start teaching at 8, which is 5 a.m. to my body. And so nothing is very regular in my life. So I more listen to my body. And sometimes I practice in the morning if I have that time and the space and I feel like it. And sometimes I enjoy more practice in the evening when everything's done and I want to do a slower practice and, come down into myself. Sometimes I go to a hot yoga class in the middle of the day. Where I live, there's one at noon that I often catch because I can get up, do my meditation, get to my computer, do my various work, things I have to do, take care of emails, then slip out for lunch hour and go to a hot yoga class and then, come back and do a little more or something. And I have a pool, so I swim, I work out at a gym. There's a lot of different things that I do. I dance.
I think it's so great to share. I'm very similar where it's a very fluid, exactly what I'm practicing and when. And I think that's nice because I think so many yogis think they have to commit, to one style and one type of way of doing things. And, if they fall off the horse or change it up, that's not good. And it's just not the case.
Well, yoga was never meant to be rigid. Yoga is about flexibility, right? Among other things. But, if we want to get flexibility in our spine and our joints, we need to be flexible in our life as well. And I think people can be too rigid. And so much of what we have today in yoga is really it's really a modern adaptation of ancient practices that came from, the Scandinavian countries 150 years ago. So, a lot of what we think is this die-hard yoga that goes back 4,000 years doesn't. And so rigidly adhering to that is missing the point, in my opinion.
So for people listening at home who really want to bring the chakras into their time on the mat, I love that anecdote that you gave with the string that they can put on the mat. And I know we talked about how really coming into what you called the core and working with the chakra system as a unit is perhaps the best way to approach it as opposed to working at one chakra at a time. Yet I know so many teachers, myself included, love making sort of chakra themed classes, right? Like a backbending class that's really focused on the fourth chakra. So when people are practicing at home, or some people who are maybe listening who are teachers, what advice do you have for them about this? I mean, is it okay? Is it good to sort of go deep and maybe just visualize one chakra as we're practicing to really get that connection? Or what other ways can they work with the system on the mat?
Well, I think it's excellent to go deep. In my chakra yoga book, I have a chapter on each chakra, and I have a whole sequence that's just for that chakra. So if you really want to get into your root, get into your legs, your ground, your feet. If you want to get into your second chakra, it's your hip openers. And like you say, back bending is opening the heart. So I think that that's fine. In the question you asked before, should somebody just do one chakra? I don't mean on a particular day, but, I'm only going to work on my fourth chakra in this lifetime. That's what I don't agree with. But, like teaching a 7-week class in which there's a focus on each chakra each week and you move through, I think can be a wonderful way. I mean, I've been teaching that way for all the 35 years I've been on the road teaching. We just finished our psychology of the chakras workshop, and we spend one whole day on each chakra, and it's a 7-day workshop. We do yoga for that chakra. We do trance journeys. We do psychological exploration and ceremony, and we dress in the color, and we create an altar. And so everything is focused on one chakra a day through the 7 chakras.
Wonderful. So that's good. I'm glad we cleared that up so people know that's still sanctioned. That's still good. Now, in order to kind of conclude and wrap up our time together, I think it's almost funny because we talked about the current of liberation, and we've talked about like all these different things, and we never really finished that downward current, that current of manifestation. We stopped at the 6th chakra. So to close, why don't you take us through the rest of that, and then we'll finish in our root and be ready to go on with our day.
It's amusing because so many people get stuck at the 6th chakra. They can imagine it and visualize it, but they don't even know how to talk about it. They don't know how to bring it into reality. So the next step down below the 6th chakra is chakra 5 in the throat, the Vishuddha chakra. And this is about communication. And so after you visualize something, let's say I want to build a house, and I've been imagining the house and how it would look and where the windows would be. Well, then I got to tell somebody about it in order to build the house. I got to go to an architect and say, well, here's what I envision. And I got to take what's in my mind and put it into my, and then the architect is going to say, well, that idea isn't quite possible, but did you think of this? And so through the process of communication, we refine our idea even more. It gets a little denser, a little more specific. We eliminate some of the fluffier things. And now that we're communicating through our 5th chakra, we're communicating with a person, which means we're in relationship with that person. So in the 4th chakra, the heart chakra, we look at what are all the relationships you need to create your dream. Maybe you need a web designer. Maybe you need a personal coach. Maybe you need students if you're wanting to become a yoga teacher. Maybe you need customers to buy your product. Maybe you need readers for your book, or an audience for your play, or a director, or a mortgage broker or real estate agent. All these different relationships, we have people focus on each one of them, even if they don't know exactly who that person is going to be, and really bring their love into it. Because if we bring love into all our relationships and we look at how can we serve through our relationships and how can our relationships serve us. So heart chakra is really about service. Then we get down to sort of the nitty-gritty in the 3rd chakra, where you have to do something. And this is about making a plan, prioritizing. First I do this, then I do that. And we get people to be very specific on their plan, all the way down to, I'm going to call so-and-so next Wednesday. But we have a really fun exercise in the workshop where we have people impersonate all your obstacles and stand between you and your goal. Your goal is written on an easel pad, and you stand about 20 feet away from it, and then 4 or 5 people represent your internal obstacles, and you have to move them out of their way with your will to go touch your goal. And in that, we learn how to say, okay, I'm not going to answer the phone right now. I'm not going to return an email right now. I'm writing. I'm not even going to go upstairs and get a cup of tea. I'm going to stay focused. And we move the obstacles and keep our will in track. Then in the second chakra, we get to the really fun part, which is how to make it fun, how to make all the work that you've outlined fun, how to bring enjoyment into the process, how to create something people will be attracted to, create something. And what people are actually attracted to is something that's going to bring pleasure or joy or beauty or novelty or something like that. So how to bring that into your dream. And then finally, how to complete all the processes that you've outlined, how to plant your dream in the ground. We have people create something that will become a seed that they take home and plant. So they finally ground all the work they've done, they dance it down into their body. And there's a certain magic that happens. And afterwards, people say, oh my God, I got my dream. I met the man of my life. I found my house to buy. I got the mortgage. I got the job. I published the book. It's just amazing. I've been teaching this for 15, 16 years. And I've gone to so many workshops a year later, and they say, I want you to see this book I wrote. I decided to do that in your workshop, and now I've published it.
It sounds like once it gets down to the root chakra, it's like it's come true. You're living it. And I love how you went through the steps, because I think for a lot of people that process, what we're calling here, this current of manifestation of going down, can often feel so disheartening. Like they have a great idea and they maybe share it with their spouse and their spouse isn't as excited about it. Or then it seems like this huge challenge, like, oh my gosh, I have to find a web designer, I have to find a real estate agent, and it seems so overwhelming, and so on and so on. And what was really calling to me as you went through it is that this isn't those challenges that we so often see as these like yucky obstacles aren't yucky obstacles. It's part of the process of bringing something to life, and there's so much value and beauty in each of those steps as we go down the chakra system.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you've said it beautifully. It's a process. It's a process of honing and condensing. And the way I describe it is when we go from the more ethereal higher planes to the lower planes, and we go into more density, we experience resistance at each level.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you mean I have to make cold calls? Oh, you mean I have to find a personal coach to get me to the gym? Oh, you mean I actually have to get up and do something? So there's resistance at each level. And a lot of the workshop is how to work through that resistance and make it fun.
Right, and make it fun, because I know for myself personally, and I'm sure maybe listeners, you can tell me if you've had this experience too, but you think just because you can visualize something that then you want it right away, right? It's like you want to move from like that sixth chakra to that first, like I'm living it, it's true, immediately. Also because we live in such an instant gratification culture in so many other aspects of the way our world works. So I love that you took us through it, and I think there's so much value in everything you're teaching. It was such an honor to get to speak to you. I love and own all your books. They're required reading in my teacher trainings, as I'm sure they are for many, many listeners who have them on their shelves. Tell us and tell the listeners, how can they stay in touch with you? How can they get connected with you? Because you've mentioned some workshops that I'm sure people would love to join in. Where can they get information on that? And then I think there's also an online component or program perhaps that is coming out, or a telecourse. So tell people where they can get this information.
Yes, well, the simplest place is to go to AnodeaJudith.com, ANODEA Judith.com, and that will show you my teleseminars. Some of them are upcoming. I have a 7-week called Clearing the 7 Windows to the Soul starting in September. I'm just finishing a 26-week online course. Next week is going to be our last week. And then there's online courses on my website that I've already done, but you can download and listen to as podcasts, or, follow the course in your own way. We also have a lot of supplemental materials we send out with the downloadable courses. And then I teach really all over the world. You can find my workshops on AnodeaJudith.com. And my other website is sacredcenters.com. Think of the chakras as sacred centers of being. That's the website I've had for years. Anodea Judith is a little simpler to navigate. And the downward current is creatingonpurpose.net. And there's also a book called that, Creating on Purpose, that goes through everything I described today.
So listeners, we're going to put all of those links in the show notes. So if you just expand the description of the podcast, wherever you're listening, you'll get hyperlinked away over to all that great information. Anodea, thanks so much for being with us. And listeners, I would love to hear how today's episode went for you. Did you get some valuable insights and knowledge? Let me know at savannaheast.com/group, or even better, by leaving a review here on iTunes. Even if iTunes isn't how you normally listen to our show, those reviews really make a difference. They help get the podcast in front of more people who are trying to transform their life through yoga and meditation, and it really makes my day. So I'd love to hear from you and get a rating or review on iTunes. Have an absolutely amazing rest of your day. Think about your chakras and coming into your core, your center, for the rest of this beautiful day, and I will talk to you next week. From my heart to yours, namaste.
You've been listening to the Sivana podcast. To find out more about Sivana, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Sivana on Facebook at facebook.com/Sivana Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannahEast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Sivana podcast.